Thanks for joining me today. I have a very cool guest with me today. Annemarie Penny and I met on LinkedIn, and Annemarie took a crazy, by today's standards, approach to reaching out and introducing herself to me. She actually didn't try to sell me a thing. She just reached out to say, "Hey, we're connected. Let's talk." And we jumped on a call months back, before winter, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, the sun was shining.
Yes, and Annemarie did rub it in my face just a little bit that she was in beautiful and sunny California while I live in Michigan, where beautiful and sunny are not things we say about Michigan. And so she took the call from outside. It was gorgeous weather there, and we have become fast friends ever since. And at the time that we talked, Annemarie has a very extensive and polished career, and she'll talk about that here in a minute. But at the time that we had come in contact, Annemarie was kind of relaunching or going live with Dream More Career Advisors. I'm going to ask her to talk about that just a little bit. But like me, her journey has changed in a really short period of time, where I thought I was just going to be posting inspirational quotes and words on LinkedIn. And now here I am filming YouTube videos. So, Annemarie, I could probably talk for like 3 hours about you. I'll shut up for a minute. I'll let you talk.
All right. Well, I'm going to put my talking ears on because you said I have extensive and polished experience. And so part of my personal brand and business brand is that, you got to find the joy and don't take any of this too seriously. And even when we're dealing with these very serious topics like career and economics and startup founders and business growth, it is a very healthy thing to laugh with yourself and laugh at yourself a little bit. And just like keep that energy clear.
Yes, yes, it is. And we'll talk a lot about some of the challenges that you saw, and some of the real inspirational ways that you went about handling that, as we kind of talk through this. So just for those watching, can you kind of walk through what you do now, and then as much of your history as you want to share to how you got to where you are right now?
100%. Well, I am the founder and leader of Dream More Career Advisors. That's dreammoreconsulting.com, or dreammorecareers.com is the website. So this is the culmination of, as goofy as it is, but so from the heart, just wanting to help people. I was a super shy child. I read books. I would hide in the corner and just wanted to be left alone. And I'm very grateful that I moved to California when I was 19 years old. Had a college degree and pretty much nothing else except a place to sleep for a few days. And I remember my mom being very worried I was going to end up on the streets. And I was laughing at her like, "Mom, I'm educated. I have a degree. I won't end up in the streets." Now I'm a year or two older than that. And I look back at that situation and go, "Oh my God, I could have ended up on the streets." But somewhere in that journey, I ended up starting out in corporate finance. I had excellent mentors. I ended up at KPMG, Pete Marwick, which is the largest Big Four accounting and consulting firm in the world. So small town girl makes big in Southern California. But basically, I ended up working with executive recruiters because, having that kind of a resume, frankly, makes you fresh meat for recruiters. And I had a very mixed bag of experience. But the woman who really got me excellent interviews and reached out to me personally and made a human connection, just like I did with you. The reason why I do that is not just because I'm a nice person, but I was mentored and I was shown this way of being as a person and as a business person that's just really beautiful. And anytime that I've gotten off that path, I remember to come back because this is always where success lies. So yeah, I ended up founding an executive recruiting firm focused on .coms back in the early days of tech startups, and have ridden through several cycles and always integrated, these human relationships that have also been business and also just cool people to work with. So getting to kind of act 3 of the story, I suppose, if you want to do it like a screenplay. In 2018, my firm was very high on the Forbes list, number 53 of America's best professional recruiting firms. It's a great honor. I had mentored so many recruiters who went off and launched their own companies and are very successful. And in November of that year, my Malibu dream house burned to the ground in the Woolsey fire. And it kind of broke my life apart in certain ways. But it's okay. I know for a lot of people that can be triggering and very sad, but I got to tell you, life is not linear and you just don't know what's going to come to you. And there was definitely some wallowing around and not knowing where to go next, but that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I can actually very much look in your eyes and say, I do have gratitude for it. If I had to do it all over again, I would choose differently, but it is what it is. And the things that have come out of it, the lessons and the friendships make it worth it. So then we had a pandemic, and a city like LA, it was very impactful. It was a lot of people close together, a lot of challenges there. So the foundation of running Dream or Career Advisors to help people and also to build on all of these years of having these executive recruiting experiences, working with founders and companies, going through startups and pivots and economic cycles up and down, and thinking you're too smart because the work came easy, and then realizing you're not that smart, so drop the ego a bit. All of those perspectives is just a really, really solid foundation for being able to advise people in their careers and in their startups. You know, how do you sort through all this chaos and just pick a through line? And how do you just wake up every day and no matter what happens, you're going to be okay with it?
Well, it's interesting. So you mentioned the fire, and then, you know, since I have met you, I've watched you deal with a couple different natural disasters that have, you know, quite frankly, they would cripple most people. And I have been so impressed with how you've chosen your attitude through all of those situations. And, you know, even reaching out for help, whatever. But never once did I hear you complain. Never once did you do the pity me. Every single time you stood up tall and you said, okay, here's how I'm going to get through this. And obviously, you know, you followed me for a while. If there's folks watching for the first time or just started following me recently, that's kind of my jam. It's life happens and you've got to pick up, you've got to move on, you've got to, whatever it is that's holding you back, you find a way around it. And my question for you here, Annemarie, is generally I'm seeing a consistent theme, and I'd like to know from your side of it, where did you get that? How did you stumble upon that attitude of nothing is going to stop me? I might have setbacks, but I'm going to win.
You know, there's so many different ways to answer that question, but nobody wants to listen to me for 6 hours. So we'll just pick a few. You know, it is a way of lensing in a lot of other applications, nature versus nurture. Was I born this way? I mean, I'm a girl, but I'm a white girl. So I could look at my early life and childhood experiences that were very negative. If we didn't have a church back then, we wouldn't have had food for a little while. On the other hand, we did have a nice big house for a while, you know, so like all of these things I can look at from a very, very early stage and say, okay, I could have decided to be a victim then, or I could have decided to rise above. And I would say one thing was that when I was younger, you know, we had the opportunity to live in Israel, and I got exposed when I was 12, 14, and 15 to a very young country, not quite the same politics as today. And many people that, you know, they had gone and drained swamps and got malaria and, you know, built homes out of the ground and, you know, had a lot of very, very ancient history of wars and wanting this tiny piece of land through a lot of different cultures. And so I think somewhere in just seeing diversity beyond all imagination and then this very resilient spirit. And I'm not trying to pick a position of who's right or wrong in a country like Israel, but I could see the attitude of there's this desert, it needs trees. And so we're going to start planting trees. And then you could literally see the trees go from, you know, here's the little ones at the very edge that they just planted. And here's the ones that they planted 5 years ago. And then, you know, so by the time you got to where they started 20 years earlier, you could just see like all this fortitude and intention. And it's just as easy to look at a place like that and go like, it's just too much. If you don't die from thirst, you're going to die from malaria because it's swampy. I mean, what kind of a country has both? Too much water, not enough water. Of course, after this winter in California, I actually live in a place with too much water and not enough water. So it does come back around. But yeah, somewhere in the nature versus nurture, I think, you know, it's useful. And I never believed this until I became a little bit older. It is useful to go back to what are those formative experiences and how did you as a little kid without the same level of experience today process those? And you got to dig deep and you got to be honest with yourself. But it can be informative. So I think that's one of it. Also, there's feedback loops. You know, here's the thing. I started being this way in the early stage of my recruiting, and I just kept getting positive feedback loops. And so I don't think our human brains are different, even if our personalities are so different, that we're just looking for this feedback loop of like, I'm doing a thing, I'm getting the cheese reward or the compliment or feeling safe or feeling loved. I don't think we're that different, even if it's expressed differently. And so now I'm very intentional to make that feedback loop happen. So if things are horrible and I'm isolating and I'm sad, I'm not getting any good feedback from anything except, you know, too much alcohol, too much sleep, too much potato chips or whatever. And so it is kind of like, wait a minute, who am I? And let me remind myself of who I am and let me go and seek those sunshiny days or the friend that's just going to pat me on the back and say, it's okay. Isn't that ridiculous? We could be 80 years old. And if somebody's like, they're there, it's okay. It still feels good. So.
It does. Now, you mentioned something a second ago that I'm going to need explained to me because too much alcohol, too much sleep, and too much potato chips. Is there such a thing?
It's an example of when people get in a funk and then you go down a spiral, right? And that self-reinforces. That's what I'm saying. Can you tell a lot of us during COVID?
I don't know that I've ever had too much Cheetos, too much sleep, or too many potato chips.
Okay. So, well, and potato chips are a very specific thing. You know, I don't keep that stuff around the house because there is no such thing as one potato chip.
And why should there be? So
we're not talking about you know, too much suffering. How's that? Like, you got to treat yourself. I mean, that's the other part of self-care and positive loops. It's like, I'm not going to eat ice cream every day, but you know, I'm going to go and get myself some gelato enough times. It's just like, this is what I need, and it's worth the stomach ache later, but it's a conscious decision.
You know, I will on that note, I had gelato for the first time 2 weeks ago in Virginia. And I am a caramel freak, and they had a caramel flavored gelato. I was in heaven.
That's the thing. You just, you know, it can't be all suffering. It's got a balance, but somewhere in writing this journey is just like, can't have it every day.
Yeah, well, I'm a fat kid in a skinny body, so I will have it every day. So
I like that. Well, I'm a cat in a woman's body, but right now I'll just be a human.
So you mentioned your background in tech, and I've been curious because I've seen some of your posts about this Chat GPT thing, and you know I know nothing about this, and so I was hoping that you could educate me and at the same time educate anybody that's watching.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing, growing up in tech, that artificial intelligence, I think for a lot of people, is this new scary thing. And it's been used more than you realized, and it's been in development for a long time. So I'm actually thrilled when something like this becomes more mainstream, because it's almost inevitable. We're going to have to work through the ethics and the morality and this kind of thing. It's also very human to be scared of something that's new. And so, you know, I do have a lot of empathy for people that are afraid to lose their jobs. They don't want to use the human aspect of it, etc. That being said, AI is just like anything else. It's a tool. The knife is not going to cut the bread for you in your kitchen. and the blender is not going to make your smoothies. You are still the human that is using that tool. And so the thing about ChatGPT that you hear in all different directions, like, oh my God, it's going to take my job away because now it's going to write everything. Well, there is no substitute for your personality in any of these programs. So ChatGPT is going to write some pretty good stuff that's very generic. If you want to infuse your personality, I have asked it to do things like, my car got stuck in the mud during these California storms and I wanted to write a story, but I was also tired. So I was like, let me see if ChatGPT can help. Tell me, okay, ChatGPT, talk about my car being stuck in the mud and what I got out of it. Well, interestingly enough, it just made up a story that was kind of, it sounded true, which then definitely actually made me nervous. Like, what if ChatGPT is writing stories that aren't true and everybody's believing them? But we also live in an era of Photoshop and filters. So there's already a lot of untrue stuff on the internet. Just have to accept that and be critical thinkers. Also, from a tone perspective, what was wacky, you mentioned, you know, I'm not a victim and I have a certain way of looking. ChatGPT wrote a story that just sounded like I was a victim of getting stuck in the mud. And that was the thing that made me just go, let me actually write my story. So I guess the thing is that because it's a tool, as the AI tools keep developing, we as humans are evolving along with them. So, you know, we came from the Stone Age and we didn't have cars and now we have airplanes. And so all of that has been thousands of years of development. So if we can look at something like ChatGPT and go, you know, this is like a wheel we carved out of stone and we're still trying to figure out how to make a car. So we're going to keep learning and it's going to keep learning. And that's the excitement about it. So when I see artists and technicians and writers working with ChatGPT, what I see is that they are learning how to manipulate it and tell it what to do and then be aware of its limitations. So it can get to a point of like, okay, well, you did what you're capable of. Like, I'm not going to tell a 3-year-old to go in the kitchen and cook me a souffle, but I might have the 3-year-old like break some eggs in the bowl for me because that's what they're going to be capable of. And I'm not a very good white page writer. So for me, I go back and forth. When I feel like writing and I just want that joy of writing, I'm just going to write because it's joyful. When I'm feeling blocked, but I also want to get something out to my people, then I'll have ChatGPT write me something to just get me started. And then I'll go in and I'll Annemarie it because AI is the tool. It is not replacing Annemarie, but the tool can help Annemarie. And that's where I use it.
Okay. So how does a person get started if they were going to use it? Is there like a website?
Yeah, OpenAI is where you would go. And what's also great about the internet is if you know what to ask it, it can tell you everything. So even if you can't remember OpenAI, who's the company creating that, you can say, how do I find ChatGPT? And it'll come right up. For ChatGPT 3, that's still free and it's conversational. So you just need to give it an email address and your phone number, which doesn't mean anybody's going to call you and collect any bills or add you to spam list. It's just their way of, you know, they've made this tool available because as we keep using it, it's going to keep learning from us. And so they have a vested interest for everybody to have access to it and interact with it. And then, you know, hopefully gain the benefit of it as well. And then ChatGPT 4 is out now, and that's a whole other level. So now they're starting to create models that have money associated with them. But as the tool evolves and we evolve, you know, some things are worth paying for.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I agree with you that some things are just worth paying for. And, you know, as I've shared with you privately, it is a goal of mine to go out and learn about it. And so I can at least speak from an educated perspective about what it is, how it can be used.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of news about it right now. And, you know, like you said, a lot of the stuff you read on the internet is already fake. So you got to be able to decipher what is fact versus.
You can usually tell, and that's also the nature of it. Anybody who's familiar with the style of writing, you're going to see it a mile away. Just the same if you get marketing emails and you can tell who at least said, oh, John, I really love your post about, you know, blah, blah, blah the other day, as opposed to, hey, John, can I sell you this software product? You can
Yeah.
tell.
Yep, exactly. So
Another piece of AI. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, AI is such a big topic. You know, I have been using Night Cafe, that's what they call it, nightcafe.ai, for creating some very simple art. You know, I do DJ mixes on SoundCloud under 40 Foot Jesus. So it's soundcloud.com/40FJ. And just good music to work by or dance in your living room or whatnot. And I always want a graphic. And I realized, wow, this is the perfect application for AI, because I just need something that's shiny and not violating anybody's copyright laws, taking images off the internet. So I could go in and say, you know, this mix is called Boots and Cats. So make me a picture of boots and cats and make it shiny. And then I feel great about that, because it's not taking away, you know, there's no money involved. I'm not taking any money out of an artist's pocket, but I'm also not tempted to grab an image off the internet that might ultimately have some sort of copyright protection. And then, you know, at worst it's illegal, at best it's disrespectful. So that's another example of AI, just like, here's a space where it's going to make something much, much easier and more pleasant.
I did not know that was possible. So that's cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, they give you like 5 free credits a day. So that gives you enough to give it a prompt and be a little bit detailed. And then they'll give you 4 images and you can decide what to go from there. But it's been creative. So it's a fun software tool to go and check out and play around with. It's very easy.
Okay. So
no artist background required, just an imagination.
Which I actually come equipped with no artist background, so that's perfect.
Excellent. I told it to make me an alligator in a swamp wearing sunglasses. Nailed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that it does sound interesting, and what I'll probably do is I'll challenge my oldest daughter to teach me. She is an actual artist, an amazing artist too. I don't know where it came from, but this kid can draw anything.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I do, I know that you and I have exchanged some messages where like you have gone in deep with your current role, where like you've really pushed everything else aside and you've focused. And a few times I've tried to get you to talk to me, and you're like, hey, I'm busy, leave me alone. I'll get back to you when I have time.
I was nicer than that. My reputation. How could anyone resist you, John? You're very sweet.
So thank you. I appreciate that. So my question for you is, what does the future hold for your current role? Because it seems like you're really excited about that. And, maybe that's just who you are when you commit to something. But I love that the energy that I pick up off of when you talk about this new role that you have. But then, as a fellow entrepreneur, I know how much blood, sweat, and tears you put into your own business. So I'm just curious if you're even comfortable talking about, what does 5 years look like?
Well, I have a pretty clear vision, and it took a bit to get to the point of, I'm giving you some edit space because I'm going to break your seal for editing. So even though I am not choosing to define myself by my house burned down and I shut down my company, it's still kind of a break point, which is more common than you think in anybody's career. No careers are linear anymore. There's always these points in your life or your business or your family that it's not quite going the direction. And that's okay. It's you get something out of every experience. So I have this 10 acres of land at the top of Topanga. It's beautiful. There's ocean in front and there's mountains in the back. And in the glory days of the Malibu Dream House, it was a grand plan to buy that land, stay in the one house, keep running business, and then build this other beautiful vision and then move. So the fire definitely put an interruption in that. And somewhere in the journey was, do I really want this? and what do I really want, and who am I, and just really deep stuff, and some, you know, PTSD from fire and all of that molded in together. So part of what informs Dream More Career Advisor and my path moving forward was really kind of dumbing it down and saying, okay, what do I really want? You know, what is the goal, and what can focus everything else that's going on towards that? And for many people, that's, you know, why there's family, right? Because then you can hang your goal on, you know, everything I'm doing is to, you know, create and provide for my family. Well, that's beautiful. And if you get off your purpose and then you can come back to that, it can create clarity where otherwise everything feels uncertain and chaotic. And so for me, building Dream More, the real estate, and that is also why Dream More Career Advisors exist, because these names are all tied together in energy that is healing and growth and, you know, kindness to others and kindness to our planet. It's a massive project. It's 10 acres, it's bordered by the Conservancy, and I'm building a factory built home with Bevy House, based in Santa Paula, California. Everything is in fire district and has to be accounting for that, and it's environmental, so it has to account for everything that's impacting the land. And so the future state is to basically take everything that was going on with the Malibu Dream House, which was community and business and just fun and ocean, and that was those were some great times. And it's not rebuilding to do this new project, because what ended up happening concurrently was that I personally wanted a place that was more about healing and a different kind of growth. And then COVID happened, and then we all got isolated and we lost a lot of people, and we all had to go on a healing journey that even if you didn't get as exposed as a lot of people in places like New York or Los Angeles were, just because there's millions of us here, I still think that everybody got affected in some ways. And, you know, what's coming out of that is a little bit of a global trauma experience that I think has been difficult in a lot of different ways, but ultimately it's going to make us stronger and it's going to give us different perspectives. So yeah, everything related to that is ultimately being able to have this beautiful project that I get to live in, and then I get to share the energy and the physical space with as many people as it makes sense that can benefit from it.
Okay, well, you've made it sound beautiful. So Chat GPT has nothing on you. As you're talking, I was envisioning this amazing piece of land, and
yes. Well, many of the photos in my content for today's inspiration, you know, those are almost always pictures of Dream More, and there will be more pictures continuing to come out. I hate to be this tech person, but you realize that the algorithms like human faces, and they're not as excited about nature as they should. And there's a lot of jokes in that, right? Like, of course, the computers don't relate to all this beautiful nature. But as things continue to unfold in some of my personal accounts, there's a lot of video and a lot of other, you know, imagery that I'm going to keep integrating. And so that's just always been me. It's personal brand is like the home and the nature is tied in with the technology and the business. And it just feels right. And people like it. It's that positive feedback loop we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. You know, and that is the great thing about I think what we do is it's the human aspect of just really supporting each other. And I think that's one of the first things that connected you and I was, you know, like when you and I talked, I had done nothing on any other social media platform. I was just doing LinkedIn. And you're like, rip the Band-Aid off, just start throwing some of your memes out there. You know, and you were one of the, I think you were the first person to actually support me on those other platforms.
Oh my gosh, I love feeling special. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, well, but you know, it helped me to, and I don't remember what it was. I think all you did was put a comment like yay or something. When I started posting the first memes out there on, I think it was Instagram, Facebook. I don't really remember. But you know, now I have a social media presence on everything except TikTok, which I'll probably stick with. I'm just not into TikTok.
You know, it's okay. I feel overwhelmed when I go on. I know that it's very useful, but I often feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, my daughter's on it. So I do, if somebody were to go out and search, they'd find that I'm a liar, that I do have a TikTok account.
Of course.
However, I only have that account so I can watch what my daughter's doing, and really just make sure that no one else is trying to watch what she's doing.
100%. One of my more brilliant friends, that is where he learns everything about AI.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of sets of it. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of wellness stuff. So yeah, it takes a minute to kind of go in there and figure out what is it that you really want. It is the same as our conversation around ChatGPT, though, is you have to tell it a little bit what you want and who you are, and then it will respond to that and then give you that in return. So the initial experience can often be very jarring and overwhelming because you probably don't want to watch a bunch of people dancing or crashing into the wall, and that might be what it throws you when you first log on.
I do actually watch a lot of those videos.
So you're telling it that's what you want. We're back to potato chips. See, one potato chip, John. You just
yes. Yeah, I'm famous for those videos, actually. Anybody who knows me and is it has to be easy for me. So that's why I like Instagram, because I can click that little arrow button to share. And I share with my wife and my daughters, and they always get the absolute dumbest videos from me. And almost always it has something to do with there's I don't know who it is, but there's always a rock star logo on his videos. It's always animals talking, which
well, yeah, I know these. There's a really funny one with some hamsters.
Yeah,
I know.
And I laugh hysterically. And then there's another one that my wife does not find funny at all. My daughters immediately got it. And it's I'll have to find it and share it, but it's a guy sitting on a log, and he's kind of holding his chin while he's cleaning off his shoe. And the person videoing it says, what happened to you? And he said, well, I stepped in some poo. And then another guy comes along, he steps in the poo. And I told him, yeah, I just did that. And so the guy punches me in the face.
So when I was married, and everything you just described sounds like my ex-husband. We're still friends, so no trigger alerts here. But he wanted to show me videos all the time, and I'm in work mode, and I would be annoyed. He's like, I'm doing something, I don't have the time to watch this video. So he came up with Annemarie's video night. And this went on for over a decade, that he would save all the links, and then over the time the links would die. So then he just started, like pulling the content, and then we would sit down and he would say, okay, it's time for Annemarie's video night. And then I would watch these videos for an hour that he had been curating. And it was anything from really super nerdy stuff to silly, stupid stuff to cat videos to shiny, flashy videos. Now, the funny thing is, like, here we are in the era of TikTok. All of this was happening before there was a TikTok. But then we would have friends over and we would have Annemarie's video night and basically do what people now do on their phones very naturally. So we were innovators. We could have made billions. We'd have just been, I don't know, more proactive or something.
I'll share this with you. I haven't told many people this. Back in 2003, I launched a business, and this business was called Honeydew Services. And I think you know where I'm going with this.
I'm starting to feel like we were the same person for a while there. That's scary.
Yeah. And so,
but I'm better here.
Yes, well, absolutely. Yeah. not hard to beat there. So I launched this business, and it was, handyman stuff. It was the miscellaneous things you don't have time for. And I was marketing myself primarily to older women who their husband had passed away, or households who just didn't have time, but drywall needed to be repaired, whatever.
Yeah.
And the thing that actually took off was grocery shopping for retirees. And what was crazy was I would ask them, like, I hate to ask this question, but what else do you have going on?
Yeah.
And they couldn't carry the groceries. And that
Oh,
was really the value add for them was they're like, it's not that I don't have time.
yeah.
And so there there was a time period where I had spreadsheets built, I had stores mapped out, I knew every store in town, no matter where they needed me to go. I would, and this is back before apps, because
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah. And what I would do is, I would tack on a certain percentage. I would then go grocery shopping, and any chance I got, I would obviously buy in bulk, and then whatever. And life changed. No different than life has changed for me over the course of the last couple of years, where I was doing this one thing and now I'm doing this other thing.
Right.
And of course, now there's Instacart, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I could have invented that. So
But the logistics of that have always just felt very overwhelming. I had a client in my recruiting firm for a little bit that it was basically gas delivery. And this is a little bit possibly female skewed, because there was a big thread on the internet about, men or you don't always realize that it is a very vulnerable place to be at a gas station for a female. And
mhm.
so we're not letting our gas tank run to empty because we're lazy or stupid. It's literally avoidance behavior that you're very vulnerable when you go pump gas. And so you don't want to do it more often than you need to. So that was one of the reasons that they were coming up with this service. Like, wow, if you're in an office building, we'll just come and like fill it up for you, and you're
Yeah.
safe. And it's worth the minor premium, because you're probably going to pay a premium if you're getting it across the street instead of down the way anyway. So there's some
Well,
great ideas out there. Anything with a physical aspect to it like that. That's why I've spent most of my career in software, because we can do this.
well, I'm glad that you clarified the gas delivery, because for a minute there I thought I was doing that for free too. So I appreciate you laughing at my dad jokes.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm kind of wishing that you still did drywall repair and wanted to spend a weekend in California, but I'm a dreamer.
Yeah, we my wife and I gutted the house that we lived in Nebraska, and I learned I'm so much better at demolition than I am at putting things back together. It took 10 years. It was a duplex, and what we did is we took out the middle walls, they weren't load bearing, and we turned it into a single family. And
Nice.
the reality for us is it was built in the 1960s. It had really become a very small apartment for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in a neighborhood where there was families everywhere. And I thought, let's just gut this thing, turn it in. And we learned very quickly that repairing things is probably not something I should do. I'm real good at tearing apart. My wife is better at the finished product.
Yep,
So yeah, she would laugh at me if I took on a drywall project today.
totally. See, that's another thing that I think is wonderful about at least opening up the conversations of gender expression and gender norms and all of that, because I have historically been a very handy person. And, I didn't even realize that, there were these gender norms that you needed to conform to. I liked him to go do groceries and gas because I didn't want to leave the house, but don't ask him to do, electrical repairs or mechanical things. And so I'd be out there with the tools. I wish somebody would launch a business, tools for smaller framed people, because that's another thing that you may or may not realize, is that a lot of the tools and ladders and anything related to handyman and construction, it's made for a male physique. And so there's a certain weighting to it, there's certain size to it. And I'm pretty strong, but there's just certain things that it doesn't work as well for different body types. So maybe there's not a for that. But
That's a great idea, actually. Like think about it from like the lefty industry.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So if somebody's watching this, you now
please.
owe a royalty to Annemarie for the idea.
Absolutely. And I've been laughed at because I have a very lightweight hammer. Like, use a real hammer. It's like, yeah, but this is doing the job and I'm not going to be sore or bruised later.
That's funny.
Yeah, but it's good that we're kind of opening up some conversations around, there's none of these chores and tasks or even professions, like working in technology. We're still making progress, but the fact that there's so many more female engineers and, hopefully more, diversity and all races and creeds, like, there's nothing about software engineering that says you're smart, but you can't do that, because that's not what you do. And AI, I think, is continuing to push that envelope, because there's a lot of just brilliant analytical problem solving kinds of people that, aren't coming from the same stereotype.
Mhm.
And it's such a new and exploding field that it's allowing a lot of other kinds of people to play on a, hopefully continuing to be more level playing field.
Okay, yeah, I actually agree with you on that, and I think you know this about me as the father of two daughters. I'm all about busting down barriers and making every opportunity available to everybody who wants the opportunity. I don't care where you come from, what you look like, who you think you are. If you can do the job, let them do the job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And employers, I mean, this is a convoluted topic, so we're not going to cover all of it, but it's just, I noticed last time I was job interviewing, and I was so worried that, oh, are they going to want somebody, that's still kind of early in their career? Am I too qualified? Am I too old? And what I experienced was, if they wanted somebody with my experience, they were so thrilled I was in the room. And if they
Mhm.
wanted somebody who was more junior, they weren't giving me any grief about, like, it was just, it was at least opening up a dialogue that felt healthier than what it has been in times past.
Yeah,
Still got a ways to go. And diversity comes in so many different forms. There are ways that employers are working harder, or should be working harder, to help. Like, I think everybody's got a little bit of a trauma experience coming out of COVID on some level, even if it's minor. And there's just ways we got to help each other and, open up that diversity for different ways of looking at the same thing, and different ideas and acceptance. This is the right thing to do.
yeah, the trauma thing that's a completely different subject. That's something we could talk
Yeah, I
for
didn't mean
hours
to drop a
about.
bomb and run away, but anyway.
No, my wife and I were talking about this today because, I'm learning through my journey is that, trauma is such a unique subject, and everybody processes experiences differently. And, we've had that conversation about the COVID trauma because everyone had a different experience. And there were some things in our family that were happening at the time of March 2020-ish. And my wife and I have had a passionate conversation about how I was completely oblivious to those things that were happening. And I never once talked to my wife through that entire. In fact, we didn't talk about it until about 2 months ago about what I was going through during that time period because the company that I was with was one payroll check away from going bankrupt. And I'm going to work every day, working directly with the CFO, trying to say, how can we drive more revenue to the bottom line? How can we make sure that payroll goes out on Friday? And so I wasn't coming home saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. And in our situation, I knew that we would be okay. But what I was worried about is we're in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit went bankrupt, Michigan went bankrupt, Flint went bankrupt. And most of the people that were working for me at the time had gone bankrupt. They'd lost everything.
Yeah.
And, they had just gotten used to being kicked in the chest. So when COVID happened, a lot of them came to me and like, you're doing your best, but this is what's going to happen. We live in Michigan and we get crapped on every time something happens. And these are folks who just prepared. They're like, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my cars. And these are the folks who were bearing through everything and they were still coming to work every day, even though almost our entire state shut down. And so to keep this back with the trauma theme, so many people have trauma from different areas of their life, whether it's childhood trauma, something that happened to them in college, a bad job, dealing with a toxic work environment can bring that kind of trauma. So it's a huge, huge subject, and it opens that door, as you've suggested, to potential future conversations about it.
It's so important. when I was going to launch my coaching business sooner, it was the year after the fire, and I spent a lot of time swimming back and forth in the little swimming pool and just meditating and not doing much of anything else. And I was so passionate about the topic, but I also recognized that I didn't feel healed enough and strong enough to be able to go out and, share that message or whatnot. And, that's a personal decision. There's no right or wrong to it. It was just where it was. But I'm seeing now that, fast forward, we're going through COVID stuff. And, then the tech industry has got all the layoffs, and then Silicon Valley Bank collapses. So, it's another parallel universe with what you just told me about Michigan, that, people get kind of beat down and then they rise up and then they get beat down again. And, the same thing happens in a lot of diverse groups. And so somewhere in there is just, yeah. So we all have trauma. It's all different. We're not always lucky enough. And I'm saying that respectfully, we're not always lucky enough to have something like our house burns down to go, oh yeah, that thing happened. It was fast and it was big and I can point to it. Most trauma is just this like kind of subtle, or it's so deep in there we don't even realize it's there. And so whether it's being expressed in the career or in your family and personal relationships, or just what's rolling around in your head that nobody knows about, it's such an important topic. And I will fearlessly and lovingly, give people the space that they need and support, and also encourage them to do the work. Because if you ignore it, it's still there. So yeah, it's healthier to face it.
It is. And I've actually encouraged people to write about it. I get a lot of people reaching out to me for private coaching. And that's what they're like, I had this situation and here's how it impacted me. And what I tell them is start writing, because that is going to help you to get your thoughts out, to get your thoughts in order. So yeah, you've motivated me. I think that that is probably going to be a future talk, and I'd love it if you would consider coming back to talk about that. And
I would be thrilled. Yeah, I'm big on art therapy and music therapy as well. So, if somebody says, oh God, writing and whatever is kind of blocking, we're humans, we're creative by nature. And that means we want to express somehow. And so, not to say the writing is brilliant because we're verbal, but also sometimes it's like, what, if you just grab a pen and paper and just sort of doodle and let your mind wander, if that's just something that's going to get that energy out and lead you to the next level, it's a worthy outlet. I play piano. I've never taken a lesson, but my attitude is like every note is beautiful. It's the mouth of it. And so a lot of times when I had no words, because I was in such trauma that I didn't even know what to express if you'd asked me. Clearly I'm verbal, but sometimes but there was something that was just very healing about sitting at the keyboard and just making sounds that sounded pretty. It really helped. Or sounded ugly, but that was part of the journey too.
You know what? But it's an expression. So
it's an expression. Yep.
So what I'd like to do, with your permission, is I would like to put in the comments of this YouTube video all of the different ways that people can contact you. And then I'll obviously, when I share this on social media, I will do the same. I'll share the different ways that people can contact you or support you, either, however, artistically or, professionally, because I love the value that you bring to the world. And I think that the more that can be just pushed out, and that energy that people can your energy specifically is contagious, in my opinion. And the way that you tell stories, I think that you capture a lot of the emotion that people deal with everyday things, but your way of making it a positive spin instead of the victim mentality, more people need to see that.
All right. We got the ears back on. We got our superpowers now. Thank you. You were gracious, and it just reinforces, we're just here to hopefully take care of ourselves and, take care of each other. So it's nothing more than that, but it's a good goal.
Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I'll look forward to doing several more of these with you. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I don't want to annoy you, but please hit that bell, because that bell will let you know when new content has gone up. And I'm grateful that you've taken the time to watch this. And if we've said anything here that you can use somewhere else, or someone you know needs to hear this, please share it with them. And I'll see you back here soon.
Yay.